Hey, this is Austin with Palmer Johnson Power Systems. Today I'll be going through what information is needed when updating your existing pump drive or gearbox. The best option will be for you to take a digital picture of the spec tag on your existing pump drive or gearbox. Once you have that, please email it to us at sales@pjpower.com and we can help you from there. If you do not have a spec tag on your existing unit, that is very common, especially once we start getting into some older gearboxes, pump drives from the 60s, 70s. That is fairly common. No worries though. If that is the case, if you do not have a spec tag, let's start with some digital pictures of the complete gearbox. Get various pictures of the input side, the output side, and then this is important as well, is if you know who the manufacturer is of the pump drive, provide us that information when you send your email. If you do not know who the manufacturer is of this gearbox, make sure to take pictures of the casting numbers that will be on the housing and include that in your initial email to us. So let's dive on into what information you will need to gather when we start this replacement option. Attached to the description of this video, I do have an application data sheet for pump drives. You can follow along on there. You can fill out the information in there. Let's start with the first pieces of information that you'll need to gather. First off, how many output pads are there on your pump drive? So you'll see some pictures on your screen here. We've got a 1 pad, a 2 pad, a 3 pad, and a 4 pad. So I am talking about those output side, the holes. How many do you have? The next one that we will need is the engine horsepower and RPM. That's going to be very important. Next, we need to determine what the ratio is of your existing pump drive. So the easiest way to do that is to gather your input gear, gather one of the output gears, and just provide us with a tooth count of each one of those gears. Next up, let's turn our attention to the input side of your pump drive. We need to determine what style input you have. The most common are going to be a drive plate input, a clutched input, and then a remote input. And the two most common types for the remote input are going to be a keyed shaft or a flanged input. So let's start with the drive plate and the clutch options. If that's what you have, the information that you need off of these are going to be very, very similar. So let's start with, we will need to know what the SAE flywheel size is of your existing pump drive. And I will jump in here and say, every time I mention an SAE size, if that's something that you're unfamiliar with, in the description of the video, there will be links to separate videos where we dive in how to measure and determine each one of these SAE standards. So we already hit on the flywheel. Let's jump on over. We need the flywheel housing size. We also need the pilot bearing bore size along with the flywheel offset, okay? Now for the clutch, we need that same information, but in addition to that, the plate that is closest to the engine flywheel, we call that the hub and back plate. I need the numbers off of that plate. That'll get us in the right direction as far as what clutch you have. Now moving on to the remote input options. So let's start with a keyed shaft. If you do have a keyed shaft input, just let us know what the OD is of that keyed shaft. Most common types are going to be a 2.5 inch or a 2.25 inch. If you have a flanged input, just let us know that it's flanged. That'll be good enough information for us. Let's move on to the orientation of the pump drive. So this is really only going to affect a 1 pad, a 2 pad, and a 3 pad pump drive. So we'll start with the 3 pad pump drive. You should be seeing 2 images on your screen. We have mounting position 1, which is going to have the triangle of the output pad facing up, and then position 2, it's just the inverse of that. Now moving on to a 2 pad pump drive, you've got mounting position 1 and mounting position 2 here on your screen. Essentially, is it vertical or is it horizontal? And then lastly, a one pad pump drive. There are 4 common ways as far as the orientation. You should see those on your screen, and they're labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which option do you have if you have a one pad pump drive? Now let's shift our focus to the output section of your pump drive. So we will tackle this for each individual output location, output pad location. We will need this information for each one. So what we will need is do you just have a standard pad with a spline adapter, or is there something else going on? Oftentimes you can run into a keyed shaft output or a flanged output. Same information that we talked earlier about the keyed shaft and the flange as far as what we'll need. But if you don't have that, you have the most common style, which is just going to be an SAE pad and an SAE spline. We're going to need to know what is the SAE pad size, and then what is the SAE spline adapter size. For the SAE pad, are you using a 4-bolt mount or a 2-bolt mount? And what that's referring to is how is it mounting to the hydraulic pump? Are there 4 bolts that are mounting up to the pump, or just 2? Let us know of that. If it's a 2-bolt mount on your pump drive, is that pad oriented vertically? Are the 2 bolts oriented vertically, or are they oriented in a horizontal fashion? Now onto the dipstick. Does your existing pump driver gearbox, does it have a dipstick? If it does, we're viewing it from the output side of the pump drive. Is it on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, or is it in the center of the pump drive? One last very key piece of information that we will need to know is how quickly are you needing this replacement unit? Are you needing it tomorrow, next week, or can you wait the standard factory lead time of approximately 12 weeks? Depending on your answer, that's going to change the options that we're able to bring to the table. I will say at this present time, we have over 100 pump drives on our shelf. So if you're needing something tomorrow, let us know. We'll have an option for you. But do want to throw that out there, as depending on how quickly you're needing it, that does change some of the different options that we'll have, different brands that we're able to provide to you as well. For further support, you can contact us at pjpower.com.